Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining for today's webinar, Introduction to the Civil Works Alliance. For those I've not met before, my name's Ashley Shorey-Mills. I'm Supply Chain Engagement Director here at the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. And I know for many of you on the call, we've had the pleasure of seeing and speaking to so many of you over the last few years as we gear up for Sizewell C. And obviously the last few weeks has been quite a lot of news, all very, very positive and optimistic, which is fantastic. And so hopefully today's session, you'll hear briefly from myself before we hand over to the main speakers to really talk about the Civil Works Alliance and what's ahead. This is broadly the agenda we're going to attempt to stick to today. I will keep it as brief as possible on the first bit, and the timings are a guide. You know, the most important things will get the messages across today. As always, we will have a Q&A at the end of the session. You will see at the top bar on your Teams, you have the ability to submit questions. So please use the Q&A function for any questions that you have during the presentations. And then should they not have been answered as the presentations go on, we will endeavour to answer as many as we possibly can by the end of the session. As always, any that we can't answer, we will then make sure written answers are supplied afterwards. Yes, we will supply all slides from today, as well as the written Q&A responses to everyone. And of course, as always, we're recording our business support programme webinars, and therefore they will also be hosted on the website for viewing afterwards. So just as a quick reminder, kind of who are the Suffolk Chamber Supply Chain Engagement team? You know, many of you have met a lot of our team, but we are part of the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce, who are the 8th largest chamber in the UK. We've been on the Sizewell C project now since 2012. So the news most recently was celebrated loudly by us, possibly more than a number, because it's been a long time coming. And we've obviously been running that local and regional supply chain engagement for the project, utilising the platform for the last number of years. And we're very pleased that now circa 3,000 businesses are signed up, employing over 900,000 people. So very much representative of the regional economy and supply chain, all looking towards working on this fantastic project. And the reason we're working on the project is the commitment that Sizewell C have made through the development consent order and subsequent memorandums of understanding since. That £4.4 billion commitment to the east of England to be spent through the construction of Sizewell C. Very much looking at how we bring local and regional businesses from across the 6 counties of the east into this project, both to benefit Sizewell, but also to benefit the wider opportunity that will be Sizewell C and the east of England full stop when it comes to infrastructure. And of course, fundamentally, the ESG commitments, the social value commitments that Sizewell have made are what are key for this part of the project and where we sit, but actually in delivering good from Sizewell C. So you will find that goal 1, that increasing of UK content, is where we sit, you know, supporting a UK supply chain on Sizewell, but prioritising local and regional businesses first and foremost. And then making sure, like I said, we're not just going to get it built on time and on budget, we're actually going to do some good whilst we do it. And our key themes, we've shown these throughout of what our priorities are, but it is about maximising this opportunity that Sizewell is going to bring to the east, and actually building that legacy that's going to be left far after Sizewell C has been constructed, alongside some of the other major infrastructure projects in the region, and of course, importantly, through ongoing operation of Sizewell B and the long-term operation of Sizewell C as well. And we do that by supporting you in all the ways, like running today's webinar, and to ensure that you are as informed as we possibly can about everything that's going on, both with the project, what's expected of you as businesses, what's expected of your teams, should you be successful and working on site, and the standards that they will need to exhibit, and everything else that comes within that. The most important message to the supply chain is, if you need help or awareness or guidance on Sizewell, we're that one-stop shop. Come to us. We will then help guide where that support exists and who you should be talking to and where you can go. And our website is that first point. You will always find opportunities and links to where Sizewell C are posting these opportunities that are going to be available. And again, a lot of that will be spoken about today. Our events that we have planned, both in person and virtual. We've got more webinars just loaded up onto the project, onto the website yesterday. And also our existing support. So whether that is to help you find funding, to look at the range of business support programs that we've run. You know, over the last few years, we've run around 25 different webinars looking at different subjects, all with a view to helping you secure the best information information you can to help you on the journey towards Sizewell C. And then, of course, compete for, where all competitively tendered opportunities will be hosted for Sizewell C. And importantly, if you scroll down that homepage slightly, you will see the forward look and the contract awards page, which has just recently been updated to show you anticipated packages that are coming up in the future. And importantly, who's been winning these packages of work, so you know who to engage with. Right, so at that point, I will now hand over to Dave Spate, who's going to introduce the first stage for the Civil Works Alliance. Dave.
Hi, yeah, good morning, everybody. Everybody hear me okay?
Perfect, Dave. Yes, please. Thank you.
Great, good. Okay, so look, I'm just going to open up, have a little bit of a sort of give a little bit of a brief overview of the Civil Work Alliance, where we're at, and then unfortunately I have to step away from the call because I'm on site today and we've got our performance review with the Sizewell C executive. So without further ado, so look, the Civil Work Alliance, CWA, we've been we were in negotiation for a long period of 24 and 2025, working the contract through with the government, with a great input from IPA as well, and we got to a place where we, following Sizewell C board and HMG approval, we signed the PAA contract, which is the Programme Alliance Agreement, and that was about 2 or 3 weeks before FID was announced a couple of weeks ago, so about 5 or 6 weeks ago now. And that contract, that agreement, was an alliance agreement for Balfour Beatty, Langeroog and Bouygues to operate as the Civil Work Alliance, with Sizewell C, the client, as the owner participant, so a four-way alliance to deliver the civil scope of the programme. The scope itself, that contract that was signed was for the civil works, primarily broken down into sort of 3 key scope deliverables, and they're sort of really broke. They're kind of like targeted in earthworks and enabling works, marine and tunnelling works, and then main civil works. And a little bit more detail on what does that actually mean. So enabling and earthworks is a lot of piling, it's preparation of the site, is some access bridges into the site that connects the temporary construction area to the main construction area, sea walls, jetties, beach landing facilities, and then all of the earthworks. And the actual earthworks commence at the beginning of 2027. And so that's a huge, vast program in itself, and we're already mobilised to site. We've started work already with the temporary sea defence and the triple SI crossing, environmental barriers, and the early earthworks already. And currently there's circa around 150 operatives on site at the moment. We will get to about 400 by Christmas, and we quite quickly get to about 1,000 people next year. And from a sort of a budget perspective, understanding of what that means from a money, from a spend sort of profile for everybody. The budget for 25-26, this is CWA specific, not Sizewell C. This is just specifically CWA, circa 500 million and around 850 million for 26-27. So you can see we're ramping up. The marine and tunneling activities are basically the core main primary cooling circuits. They're big tunnels that go out into the North Sea with 2 great big pump station intake shafts inland. That's we're already sort of looking at the design, procuring the design, and out to look at early long lead procurement of tunnel boring machines, etc. So that follows on, and the shafts, we start to dig the shafts for the tunnels towards the end of 2027. And then the third kind of key area of scope is the main civil works itself, and that's what you would all recognise in the CGIs as the power plant, the power station, the building with the dome, etc. And so that's the scope that forms, and that's a sort of 1 million cubic meters of concrete, and that's the scope that forms the CWA alliance in agreement. And we chose an alliance agreement really because we wanted to sort of replicate the supply chain, the key players within the supply chain and also the design of Hinkley Point C. We've got to remember that Sizewell C's Unit 1 and 2 are Units 3 and 4 for the UK. The European Pressure Reactor, EPR, with their sister reactors to the two at Hinkley. So we wanted to try to replicate the supply chain, replicate the knowledge, replicate the memory, replicate the methodology, replicate the design. So we developed under agreement with government an alliancing structure and an alliancing contract, and that's what we've signed, and that's what we stepped forward into. Sat outside of that as well is then the design contract. We've replicated the design partnership that we have for Hinkley Point C with the key designers primarily based in Bristol, but we are also moving a considerable amount of the designers into our offices in Orwell Logistics Park, which is just outside of Ipswich. And on Orwell, we've started to mobilise into the Orwell Logistics Park area, and obviously we've got people on site, but we're bringing our teams that are currently based in London out to Ipswich. That's sort of happening now. We've started to go through consultation with staff members. I was there at Orwell yesterday. I'm on site today, back on site tomorrow. And we sort of move through the rest of this year and until we end up in sort of the summertime of next year, where we've fundamentally moved out of London and into Suffolk. I think, and so that's sort of really key. We're currently, as I said, around 150 operatives on site. We get to sort of 400 by Christmas. We are, from a staff perspective, we're around 450 staff, and currently the staff are spread between London, Ipswich, and Suffolk, then plus designers. So that's a sort of a bit of an overview of where we are. I think we've got quite a lot of people to talk to you today from the CWA, from various roles and various parts of our team, and so I hope they give you a good briefing, and you get some good value from it. Clearly, we are having to mobilise at pace. So the figures I mentioned earlier are huge volumes of spend, and we get up to in 27, 28. Get up to our kind of prime turnover point of around sort of just over £1 billion a year in Civil Work Alliance only, and then we need to maintain that for several years. So you can imagine what that means from a people, material, and equipment perspective. So a vast proposition, and one that CWA are up for, and it's very exciting times. So that's probably enough for me, and I'm going to hand over to Mick. I thought Mick was on holiday, so is he back?
I'm back.
You're back. Okay, great. Mick Jennings is our CWA procurement lead. Over to you, Mick. We can't hear you. You're on mute, Mick.
Have you got me?
Gotcha. Go for it.
Thank you, David, and thank you for that. I have to say it's wonderful to be on this call. I've been involved now for the best part of 3 years, and actually to be on one of these sessions, I've attended a number, but actually to be on one of these sessions, I think it's absolutely fantastic that we can stand up as the CWA in contract and really showcase what's in front of us for the next significant number of years. For want of not wanting to repeat of a lot of what David said, I'll take you through a very high-level overview of, in essence, what's in front of us, before I'm going to hand over to Derek, who will go into the marine and tunnels and the enabling and earthworks in fuller detail. So next slide, please. So, as David said, four key elements of work. I think David said 3. I'll make that 4 on the basis that we've also got the ancillary works, which do come towards the end of the programme. But in terms of the key sort of elements of scope, three key sections of work, plus the ancillary works towards the end of the programme. Kicking off the moment with the enabling and earthworks, closely followed by the M&T, the marine and tunnelling works. Main civils is in heavy preparation at the moment, and that is due to start towards the end of 2027. So for the purposes of today's session, we'll be focusing on, as I say, enabling earthworks, elements of the marine and tunnels, and we will be having a session specifically for the main civils works in the non-too distant future. Obviously, is the critical massive works, as David said, that's effectively the power station that you can see. That does so it does really require its own session, and we'll be putting that in the diary over the coming months. Next slide, please. So, yeah. Thank you, Bethany. Just leave it there. So, details on this slide aren't great, so apologies for that. We've got, I say, the two key elements of work at the moment: enabling earthworks. This is the work that you can see the CWA delivering now. And again, from a very, I'm going to say from a layperson's perspective, there's two key elements to the enabling and the earthworks. The first is we build a watertight, non-structural wall around effectively the footprint of the power station. You can see that as the MCA detailed very, very, it's very tiny on the slide, but the MCA area is we build a wall, we make it watertight for the purposes of building the power station. And then the next element, once the wall is or as we construct the wall, we start the earthworks. The earthworks is we have to remove about 6 million cubic meters of peat. We replace that with a foundation for the power station, which is about 3.6 million tons of hard rock. And then that effectively creates the foundation for the main civils works. The main civils works, as I say, starts towards the back end of 2027. That involves the batching of about 1.5 million cubic meters of reinforced concrete. There's about 300,000 tons of steel in that. And once that is complete, that effectively creates a platform for the MEH Alliance and for the equipment team to then start building effectively the power station itself, which ultimately will be commissioned by, I think it's 2036. So while we're delivering the main civils works, the marine and tunnels will also be in full swing. This involves effectively the cooling system for the main power plant, and is made up of 3 tunnels, which go obviously into the North Sea. There's 2 intake tunnels, 1 outlet. Each is around 3 kilometres in length, with diameters between 6 and 8 meters. Again, just repeating what David said, I think the shafts for those tunnels, and again, Derek will go into more detail, I think are due to start towards the end of 2027. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I will hand over to Derek now, and I look forward to Q&A at the end of the session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. As you can see, my name's Derek Orr. I'm the pre-construction director for Marine and Tunnels, Enabling Works and Earthworks. I don't quite know where to follow after Mike, because he's done quite a lot of the work for me this morning. But if we move to the next slide, in there. As Dave Spate probably said at the beginning, the project is transitioning at the moment towards delivery. Dave mentioned some milestones and some costs that we're actually moving towards in the programme in there. And to achieve this, there are already some contractors in place at the moment. Now, that doesn't mean opportunities aren't there at the lower level, but what we thought it would be actually useful in the first part of this presentation to actually look is where we are, what's appointed, and there are opportunities at lower level if you contact some of the contractors there. for support in the works they're doing there. So I'll do a brief run through of the works to date in the ground improvements in the SSI crossing, which is here, and then I'll move on to the future works that's coming up, both for the enabling and earthworks and also the marine and tunnels, which will have a big expansion over the next 12 months. So firstly, enabling and earthworks in the SSI crossing. As you can see, there's a lot of works that's already been placed. ArcelorMittal of the sheet piling, land and water are commencing the drain diversion and the environmental barrier now. The Bailey Bridge will be coming in next year, with Janssen being the preferred supplier to bring that in. There's Balfour Beatty Ground Engineering doing ground improvement works and expanded, carrying out the civils abutments. This work will really be running through the whole of 2026. I have to get my years right there. I spend so many times in 27 and 28 at the moment. But actually, these works will be continuing on now. They've started. Contractors are engaged, so please take advantage of the opportunity to get in contact with that local engagement to actually make, to make the maximum benefit of the works that's actually taking place on site at this precise time. The second one, if we go to the next slide, is the ground improvements, and this is really a recent start. There's early geotech works that's actually taking place, deep soil mixing, with elements of what that will require for cement powders and the preparation. And this is the preparation for the plastic wall that we're actually going to be putting in, that Mick actually mentioned in his part of the discussion. And as I say, it's roughly for all intents and purposes, it's a 500 by 500 plastic wall with a central spine wall in the midst of it, also being 500 metres long, roughly 50 metres deep. So you can imagine the amount of support these teams will actually need in support and completing the works for deep soil mixing, cutter soil mixing, and ultimately the plastic wall. This works has just started now, with a major milestone being hit in July, and will continue through probably to the back end of 2026, where it then links into the commencement of into 2026 for Unit 1, 2027 for Unit 2. That, with the dewatering, then facilitates the major earthworks, which we'll come to in a little while as well. So, major plant coming to site, major deliveries taking place over the period here, but there's still more to come, as we talked about before. The next slide, with the temporary sea defence, is really placed and is underway now. Now we've got two particular parts of the temporary sea defence, and you'll see in this picture, in the middle of the layout of the slide, there's a 999-year lease line, and everything to the north of that's actually placed. The sheet piling is going in at the moment, and is going well. However, there is a second half of that, which is the temporary sea defence to the south, which will involve rock armour, probably taking place somewhere between February 2026 to August 2026, depending on safety case approval. This is the works that actually liaises in with Sizewell B. So the works have not been placed at this particular time for this work. The design's probably going to complete in the next few weeks and few months, and then we're going to a period of tendering and then delivery against these for the rock armour protection as a follow-on activity. The exciting thing about this is we're still developing the solution for that. The rock armour is probably 3 to 6 tonne in weight. We'll need special platement. It could be that we go for an option, depending on the supply chain and the engagement we have with the supply chain, of using precast concrete elements rather than just rock itself. So there's lots of opportunities there over the next year with respect to the temporary sea defence south, as we affectionately call it. But it's works in progress in the defence. The design is nearing its completion state, ready to move to the next stage. So next slide. Now we get into elements of work that's starting to move forward, but it's not fully placed with the tier ones, and that's the MBIF, the construction drainage outfall, and also the desal and marine works. There is a requirement for this site to actually have a desalination plant and also install a construction drainage outfall, and also construct a marine bulk import facility. And I'll cover these kind of separately in itself. For the construction drainage outfall in the desal, a contract's already been placed with Volker 7 for the horizontal directional drilling. There's lots of support activities actually taking place for getting the site ready. There's some shaft construction as well that's just about to start at this precise time. Offshore work activities, some dredging activities, and also a very specialist pipe that's going to come from Norway. It's a single extruded UPVC pipe that needs to be formulated together to then pull back to give the relative smoothness required for the construction drains itself. A lot of these works, again, have been placed, but there is still support activities required. For example, we're just about the point at this moment taking over the hub office in Lowestoft, with some support actually required in Lowestoft to then provide the support to do the offshore works for the desal and the pipe pullback. Head construction as well, the small, as I say, these things are relatively small heads, probably between 5 and 10 cubic meter heads that then go in position, that then allow the desal to operate in its final conditions. And of course, there'll be some probably duct bills for the CDO outfall on the north side of the site. The MBIF is a really interesting facility. So the whole aim of the MBIF is actually for the importing of backfill material, which in effect creates a base that allows the construction of the main civil works that Dave Spate was talking about, which to be as near as possible a replica of what was constructed at HPC. So this backfill material has to be closely graded, well monitored. There's an element of mixing with on-site materials, and then placed in a controlled manner to give the formation that then allows these nuclear structures to be placed in put in position. To allow these materials to be imported, we've got fairly strict DCO requirements and vehicle movements across the site. So this will actually be by boat predominantly, with some rail transportation as well. The bulk import facility is basically 500 metres long, as you can see in the slide here, with a jetty head roughly about 50 by 45 metres. It's a piled structure. It's structural steel. There's a precast concrete slab on top here with dolphins, bollards, and fenders being installed. So as you can see, some of the elements have already been placed with the suppliers there, but there's also elements of supply chain being developed as well. So the superstructure, whilst being carried out by Bachy Salatanche, we have a requirement for specialist welders and suppliers that are close there that can actually weld the structures together. There'll be local suppliers for actually installing elements on a canti-traveller system. And the canti-traveller system's never really been used in the UK. It's been used around the world, but it's a single operation, very good for these long finger type jetties, which allows the construction of the piles, the structural steel work, and also the precast elements all at the same time. Therefore, what we actually have as we move down the jetty is a fully constructed jetty. at each particular vent. But above and beyond that, we'll also need safety boats. We're currently working through the requirements for guards and handrails, and that's also the temporary condition and also the permanent condition would it actually be there. Above and beyond that, we've got small power and lighting, which will be quite extensive down the jetty because it'll be working 24 hours a day because, as we say, it's going to be tidal working, as we talked about fenders and bollards. And then there's offshore dredging to allow the heads to take place. One key constraint that we actually have is that the piling works can only take place over the winter season. So key is actually ensuring that the piles are installed between the month of September to the month of April. Out with that season, if we don't achieve the piling, then we will have to come back for another season's work. So an awful lot of work is actually going into ensure that the piling works are all in place. It's intended that the construction works are really completed by October next year. Then there's a follow-on conveyor system that needs to go in to allow the overall marine bulk import facility to be operational by April 2027. So it's a really exciting time for that. It's a major structure that's getting built, and as I say, it'll be something that's really visible to the whole community. Further on from that, if we move to the next slide, there's the beach landing facility. And whilst it's in the same slide, one part of the beach, the marine bulk import facility, I'll just cover in there, is at the end of that, it will have to be removed as well. So whilst it might be about 2032, 2033, actually it's a temporary structure that will be removed at the end of the project as well. The beach landing facility will be the permanent structure that will be there throughout the lifetime of the project. It's roughly a 200-metre long jetty, but it will support the import of the heavy loads that are required for the site, both during its construction and also during any maintenance or follow-on activities that need to be done throughout the potentially 120 years that the facility will be in operation and in decommissioning. So it's the design will be completed around about January 2026, and following that we'll go into a tender process. Because of the length of it, it's not really viable to use a canti-traveller system, so a different type of system will actually be required to support that. In addition, there'll be some UXO works as well required, just to actually double check all of the to make sure there's no UXOs where we actually want to put piles, and also some dredging activities, some offshore areas for a cradle to beach the vessels. That work's going to take place late 2026 and be available again by May 2027 to allow the works and the deliveries to take place and there. So that will give us 2 areas that we can actually import materials to the main site. So that roughly gives you, I'm at the end of 2026 into 2027. As a follow-on, really for a future one, as Dave Spate actually mentioned in there, is we're going to move into elements relating to the big dig and the earthworks, which will start to take place round about the end of 2027. With removal of the main ground and then get into serious, what we call the big dig, affectionately, in really early 2027. But we'll cover that in a bit more detail and the requirements for that round about the probably another 3 to 6 months where we're in a position with the strategy and the social approach being solved. Okay, so that's a brief run through enabling works and earthworks. I'll jump on to the next slide where we're going to marine and tunnels. And it's funny, as we do talk about marine tunnels slightly differently, there's a lot which is, for me as I call marine and tunnels, really the blood supply to the site. Without the water actually going through the whole of the system, basically you don't have a facility. you've already got an idea there's 3 tunnels that's actually going to take place there. But above and beyond that, if we move to the next slide, we'll just take you through some of the elements that we've really already went through with respect to that and what the scope is. And it's been said before, there's basically 3 3-kilometre tunnels. You will notice that there's a on-site construction area, so the early civil works associated with that and to support the activities is going to be 2027 into 2028. The tunnel in itself is probably late 29 at the moment, but we need to have the whole thing set up as well. Supporting that as well, there'll be off-site fabrications, for example, the TBM, and there's also what's taking place in the ACA to store segments, but more on that later. I would say it's a near to replication as much as we possibly can to HPC. And the fact is we've got 3 tunnels. We've got an outfall tunnel, single outfall tunnel that discharges the material once it's been through the system. And we've got 2 intake tunnels. And as Mick has actually said, the intakes are about 6 metre, the outfalls about 8 metres, just slightly larger. Above and beyond that, we've got 3 intake heads, 4 intake heads and 3 outfall heads, and we've also got some deep shafts, some liners, and some off-site work activities. So it just gives you a flavour in there. One of the things that's been focused on at the moment is that, you know, we've got works taking place in the MCA and the oral offices in Ipswich. This is going to be a wider impact, and it starts in the next month, if we go to the next slide. So the Avonmouth heads and tunnel segments will be manufactured in the existing facility that was created for HPC in Avonmouth. The advantage that actually gives us is that it means the site's already set up. There's a precast factory there. That precast factory has been used for High Speed 2 as well, and we'll transition that into one which is specific for Sizewell C. You'll also note in the picture on the left-hand side, you can see the heads getting constructed there as well. And that's the case. It's going to be the case that we will do the same here. You will have noticed, maybe if not there, but you'll see it in the next slide as well when it comes up, that there is also ramps. And part of the area where you see the accommodation block in the top left-hand corner of the picture will actually be used for the construction of the ramps. And I'll come to that in a little while. We have a phased handover with respect to the site. So the first part of the site getting handed over is the precast factory, an area which is to the right of the accommodation block and also a segment storage area. And we will take over that roughly Q3 2025, in effect as the 1st of September. And we'll start to develop up the early civil works, and we'll cover a bit of that in a couple of slides' time. Later on in Q4 2026, we then take over the heads and ramps area, and that's once HPC are finished with them. So that actually allows then a complete transition between HPC and also the works that will be taking place at Sizewell C, and we've really got a nice timeline for that transition. And then above and beyond that, then there's a rail head, and we've got a rail head to actually deliver all of the segments by rail. So if you know High Speed 2 or you know HPC, we delivered them by HGV. As we said before, there's a fairly heavy constraint on vehicular access, so we will be delivering them by train to the ACA, and then from the ACA on a just-in-time basis into the TCA. So if we go to the next slide, so that's an opportunity that's there now. The works that's actually going to be taking place there is, of course, the tunnel segments. So we're building a team for success at the moment. And I say building a team for success, so that's not just the CWA, it's not just suppliers who've been there before, it's actually we're in the point now of mobilising to start the tunnel segment works round about late 2027. And in doing that, then we need to actually develop up the concrete plants, and we'll come to those in a second. Make sure the materials are nuclear class 1 graded and standard. and all of the supplies can be fully traced back in there. You'll notice in there there's also the rail head, and we've done an indicative rail head and rolling stock. All of that needs to be ordered and supplied to allow the works to take place. And you'll see a gantry crane in the background as well. We'll require these to support the works as well. These works, the one on the right hand side, is nothing to do with HPC, but it just gives you an idea of what the facility will look like in the areas when we require storage areas, what they look like on the left-hand side. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get into a wee bit of detail in there at this moment. And the proposed layout that we're actually talking about there's works that's going to be taking place that will start when we get planning permission round about Q4 this year. There'll be site set-up contracts. So we'll get UXO investigation, GI works and some piling works. There has been office welfare and accommodation. The works tendered. We're going through a selection process at the moment. There's civil works and car parking and EV charging. There's electrical and distribution works, marine procurement strategy, batching plants, which was fairly specific to actually support the nuclear class 1 concrete, gantry cranes, refurbishment of existing precast factory. So the factory inside is going to get completely refurbished with a new carousel. So as you can actually see in there, there's only some of the works has actually been tendered this time. So there's a real opportunity, if not just if you extend to the East Coast, but also if your works extend to the West Coast, to be involved in some of this work or the specialist areas you want to be involved with. And we'll actually be putting these on the site such that there's opportunities for everybody to be involved in some of these works in there. You'll see in there's a marine procurement strategy in there, and that's an interesting one because we've been engaging with different parties with respect to how we actually deliver the for example, the heads to the site. How do we get them close to the site, and how do we actually put them in, and what's the optimum strategy from there? And we'll be covering that in later times as well, because there's rather big procurements that need to take place, which involve a huge amount of offshore vessels and fabrications that will be in there as well. So that's a brief summary of what's happening in 2025, 2026, all very close. Works will take place right through into 2027, but you get an idea of the size and scale. Roughly for the slab thicknesses for civil contractors, I would guess they're about 500mm thick. And there's a huge amount of area that need to be actually installed with these. And as I say, EV charging is something that's really important to us, particularly with we're trying to reduce carbon footprint. So that's areas that if you've got experience in or exposure to, is something of interest to us as well. Next slide. So what do the marine intake heads look like? Well, Mick has covered quite a bit of this, but I'll give you a bit of detail of some of the works, and it covers into the marine works as well. So we'll get 4 large intake heads, and the intake heads, as I said, will be constructed in Avonmouth, transported round in a just-in-time basis to the main site. Above and beyond the heads, there is 8 ramps that needs to be. Now, when we talk about ramps, we're talking about still probably in the region of 2,000 tonnes weight that actually needs to be there. As we say, it's about 3,500 for the intake heads, probably about 2,000 for the ramps themselves. All of these need to be lifted in position. Also, then they have miscellaneous fabrications associated with them. So there's lifting lugs, which we're moving to actually put it into compete for at this precise moment, and start the works associated with these. These are super duplex, requiring specialist welding, and would be delivered to the site just in time to allow them to be cast in position. There's also miscellaneous items in super duplex, which we affectionately call jewellery. just because they're not as big as the main elements there, but they're around to support elements like the head positioning. Some of the locking positions all need to be super duplexed to actually make sure they last the full lifetime of the project, such that they can be removed at the end of the day. You'll also see round about that you can see dredging in the lower right-hand picture. You can see the extents of the dredging in the pictures there. And then the stone fill goes in to actually then allow the head to be placed. Above, once the heads and ramps are in position, we then put a locking stone round about it, then a major stone rip-wrap or rock angler protection to the heads to ensure that it doesn't move due to surge loading. So that's a brief summary of the intake heads. Roughly, they will be constructed late 2027, but again, all of the works associated with material development will be done in advance of those dates to make sure that we have seamless construction activities. The outfall in the next slide is slightly smaller. You can see that it's a mirror image at the moment of HPC. So where is the heads at Sizewell C are slightly different in orientation for the intakes, the outfalls are just the same, and roughly those are discharging large volumes of water that's been through the system. It will have the same type of methodology. There'll be dredging, all constructed at Avonmouth. It will have the granular backfill to support the heads in placement. Then the sinking of the heads, replace the locking stone in position, then the rock hammer. You get an idea with some of the volumes that's there. Again, these will be done in the same timeline. So the idea we actually have is that the marine works will come first. The UXOs will be starting next year, such we get an elapsed certificate to allow dredging works to commence 27-28, and then the placement of the heads in 28, and then the shaft liners, which then will be in first this time, rather than HPC, where they were in after the placement of the tunnels, and it's a non-line connection that's actually taking place. But it's very similar to the works at HPC in principle. Differences being is it's a non-line connection, so we then drive the head in position, place a liner and above it, and then the tunnel and works then feed to the alignment of the heads, such that we can then position them with greater accuracy. So roughly the quantities that's involved, if we go to the next slide, is we've got a dredging volume somewhere in the region of 127 to 198,000. Reason it changes is we've also got a moving seabed, so we're working between best and worst cases and where we are. We've now got no secant piles. That's now been removed in the concrete for the tremie fill, so some of this has been updated from there. There is annular grout, which is to hold the casings in position, such that when we drive it, we've talked about the intake heads, the ramps, the casings. Now the casings are quite interesting because we drive the casings into position to form an excavated layer, so as we can put the intake heads, so as we can put the liners in position. The liners are the element that's actually the most important, because they form then the link between the tunneling operations and the North Sea. So there's an awful lot of work actually goes in creating those liners, which again are class 1 nuclear, which is the highest grading traceability and also quality that's actually required. And for those who are non-nuclears, if you imagine the highest bridge standards, if you understand that, then go even higher. That's where class 1 nuclear takes you to. Traceability is absolutely key at every step in every element we actually do throughout the whole process. There's about 40,000 cubic metres of backfill and 15,500 are rock armour. I'll take an action to actually update that slide with a couple of bits that's no longer relevant, because we're now going for a deep tunnel option within that, which means the casings are now about twice the length as we were at Hinckley, so about overall about 30-40 metres deep, where water depth about 16 meters. So you're talking about casings about 60 meters long, and the liners being about 30 meters long in average. So that gives you a flavour of the works that's actually taking place there. In order to support that, if we move to the next slide, we're developing a support hub. Now, that support hub is going to be in the East Coast. So whilst we talked about Avonmouth in the West Coast, we've talked about Oral, we've talked about the MCA, where we'll carry out the works. This is actually going to be an off-site support hub for the marine operations. It'll be located in the East Coast. We're in the process of trying to find the optimum location for that. We prefer it all to be in one location, which limits the number of sites it could potentially be. But included in that would also be site offices, crew transfer location, quayside logistics, large materials and storage for the casings and liners, so as we can actually then concrete them on that site. Storage of rock materials, as we spoke about, the staging of the precast head, and then the dewatering and dealing with the waste products that's actually produced. Again, that will start to take place in 2027, so it gives you an update of a flavour of what's coming up with the main ruts. You can see the fact the head's being transported by barge. It might not be by barge this time because we have to take the head round Land's End. It might be a combination of our vessels and barge, and we're working out what's the optimum route with respect to those locations. So that gives you a whistle-stop tour of the works in marine and tunnels, and also enabling works in earthworks. And as I say, for the next discussion, we'll probably take you into earthworks in the TSD South and give you an update of where we are with respect to the marine and tunnels. So I'll hand you back now for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Derek. Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniela Rodriguez, the Procurement System and Process Lead for CWA. Hope you are enjoying this webinar. So far you have learned more in details on what CWA is, and as well the engineering associated with this project. So now we will go through the details regarding the process that will be supporting the procurement process, as well the systems for the CWA. If we can go to the next slide, please. So first point, CWA will have their own systems. And at the moment, we are working on the transitioning from the Sizewell C systems to the CWA systems. For the purpose of this webinar, we'll be focusing on the system involved, starting from the expression of interest, the EOI, to the tendering process, which are, because they are the ones that are related with the supply chain. So as you can see on the screen, some of them will remain unchanged. That means that in Sizewell C will be using some of the system, and the CWA will be using the same ones. Another will change. So if we can go to the next slide to see this point more in detail. Thank you. So starting with expression of interest, EOI. So at the moment, you have been seeing different opportunities for the project to compete for. We'll still using the same system, the same platform to post different opportunities for this project. In terms of pre-qualification, at the moment, we have been using a system called iValua to manage all this pre-qualification process. And CWA will be aligned with the UK Common Assessment Standard. And for this, will be supported by construction line. Then regarding the tendering process, evaluation, and the contract award, at the moment, we have been as well using iValua system, and we are at the moment transitioning and implementing a new system called ASITE. If we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of supply chain, what is important for you or what you can expect from all this change? Well, the first point, obvious, the system will be different. So the interaction, and you will need as well to be registered to this new platform. Some of the steps will be simplified, and that's one of the purpose to move to new system for this project. However, as normal at the beginning, some of the process, systems, and interaction may feel unfamiliar for some of you, especially if you haven't worked in a different system before. Another key point will be to try to understand the new process from the beginning. This will allow all of us to avoid delays and duplication in the process. We'll be there to support you in this transition. Another key point is regarding the ongoing processes. All the ongoing processes will remain in the system when they started. So I put just an example. If a tender has started in Evalua, we'll be running this tender through Evalua until the end. So we are not planning to transfer ongoing tenders through the new system. We are expecting as well to have more efficient internal approval workflows that will allow us to reduce response times and reduce the timeline for the whole process in general. And as I just said before, we will be supporting the supply chain and the people involved in this project in this transition. We'll have sessions, for example, very soon with construction line to explain you how the pre-qualification works, how you can interact in the platform to allow you to have all the elements and ensure this transition is easier for you as supply chain. That's all on my side. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. That was great. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Jess Rivers and I'm part of the social impact team within the Civil Works Alliance at Sizewell C. I'm here today to talk about the social impact work we're delivering in the region. I work alongside Nikki Payne, who is a social impact lead, and together we support the delivery of Sizewell C's social impact and ESG goals through the Civil Works Alliance and our wider supply chain. So today, I'll give you an overview of our social impact work. If we just go to the next slide, please. I'll give you an overview of our social impact work, how it supports Sizewell C's wider commitments, and how businesses like yours can get involved. So this section will give you a clear overview of what social impact means for our project. I'll talk about Sizewell C and the CWA's commitments and all the events that we've supported. Next slide, please. So social impact is essentially about the positive difference we make in the communities we're working in. It covers things like employment, training, education, health, and well-being. Next slide, please. So for Sizewell C, social impact is a key part of how we build responsibly. It's about ensuring that the benefits of this major infrastructure project reach those who need it the most. So particularly in the areas around Leiston. So in order to deliver this, the CWA have taken a strategic approach by using the indices of multiple deprivation to shape our approach to deliver social impact. So this data-driven approach ensures that our work is targeted and effective. Go to the next slide, please. So through engagement sessions like these, we are setting up to deliver on our local and regional spend agreements, as well as focusing on delivering social impact commitments on employment. So Sizewell C have committed to provide 1,500 apprenticeships, 70,000 UK jobs, and they aim to target 40% women to be working in nuclear by 2030. Go to the next slide, please. So our social impact goals within the CWA align with Sizewell C's ESG supply chain goals. The size and complexity of the project mean that we rely heavily on our supply chain. So hundreds of organisations, large and small, and that makes it all more important that we're all working collaboratively to deliver these objectives and goals. So today we're sharing the CWA's work on 3 of the goals listed, which cover the following. Investing in education, employment and skills. We're helping to deliver apprenticeships. We're tackling workforce inequality, reducing the gender pay gap, promoting staff wellbeing, optimising opportunities for local local communities and also maintaining green spaces in Suffolk. Go to the next slide, please. So as the Civil Works Alliance, we're committed to making a real difference in a few key areas. So firstly, we're investing in education, employment and skills, and we'll be delivering over 500 apprenticeships of Sizewell C's target of 1,500, and that's just within the CWA. So to support Sizewell C, we're also focused on workforce diversity, so particularly trying to increase more women into apprenticeships and tackling inequality across the board. We regularly report on our progress with the gender pay gap, and we also track how many of our suppliers are supporting the mental health and wellbeing of their staff. We'll go to the next slide, please. So we're also focused on optimising opportunities for local communities, and that takes many forms. So we contribute through donations and in-kind support to community initiatives here in Suffolk, across the east of England and also throughout the UK. Our teams also give their time in volunteering and getting involved in local projects that matter. So we're supporting efforts to reduce crime, improve health and wellbeing, and reach those in the community who are disadvantaged and harder to engage. Go to the next slide, please. So this slide here just highlights some of the organisations that the CWA are working with to support our targeted approach to social impact. So yeah, as you can see here, this is just a snapshot of the partners that we're currently working with across key focus areas. If we go to the next slide, please. So careers outreach. So on the screen, you can see some photos from local careers outreach events we've been part of. We've worked with universities, schools, colleges and other organisations at careers fairs, giving us a chance to talk directly with students about their futures, share what Sizewell C is all about and highlight the opportunities available. We've also taken part in mock interviews, help students with their CVs and offer advice on, moving from education into the world of work, which is quite a big transition for young people. So if we go to the next slide, please. We've also been working to support the unemployed with Job Centre Plus, the DWP and local prisons. We're also working with charities that support hard to reach groups as well. So this again has included attending lots of careers fairs, running mock interviews, delivering presentations about Sizewell C and the opportunities it offers. I think it's been a great way to be honest, to show why this is such an exciting place to work and help people see the different routes that they can take to get involved in the project. So if we go to the next slide, please. So volunteering is another big one. So we're supporting a number of organisations through our volunteering efforts as the Civil Works Alliance. So for example, we've partnered with Inspire to help renovate a youth outreach building. We've supported Suffolk Wildlife Trust in maintaining natural habitats. We're working with Access Community Trust, and on screen I think there's some photos that shows us supporting garden clearance for homeless accommodation. And then more recently, we've been helping in local food banks to provide meals for those experiencing homelessness. So in the last year, we've actually delivered 663 hours of community initiatives. We've attended 56 events and we've supported over 29,000 individuals. We've also raised more than £4,400 in donations as well. So if we go to the next slide, please. So we've been working closely with our subcontractors to extend our social impact across several areas. Firstly, we're supporting a number of prisons. So that's including HMPs, Wayland, High Point, Norwich, Hollesley Bay and Warren Hill. Here we're helping with careers engagement and improving employment outcomes for people preparing for release. We're also actively involved in educational outreach. So we're working with schools and colleges across the region to raise awareness of opportunities in construction. And finally, we're proud to support local charities and community groups, so often through in-kind donations and hands-on help. So, to make sure we're giving back to the communities that we're working in. we do already have some fantastic connections across the region, but really keen to collaborate with our subcontractors and supply chain to support our organisations, and also organisations that matter most to them. And as you can see from today, we've already made a great start on delivering our substantial social impact commitments, and we will require the support of our supply chain to continue this great work. We're looking forward to seeing how we, as the CWA, can, work with our suppliers in the future to optimise opportunities for the local communities. So yeah, that's it from me. Many thanks for your time today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jess. I just want to thank you all for joining today's session. We hope you've taken away some learnings about who the CWA are, where we fit in the delivery of Sizewell C. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, we want to continue these events, maybe some in person, some webinars with the local and regional supply chain, and we'd like to hold more in the future around some targeted scopes of work that Derek mentioned earlier. So we already have the Sizewell C Essential Standards webinar coming up in September, October time. So we'll be joining with Sizewell C as the CWA, and we'll be going into a bit more detail on the construction line process that Daniela mentioned earlier. So I think Ashley will be sharing a link to the events page on the Suffolk Chambers website. So we'd also like to hold a main civils event, so going into the detail that Derek's gone to on enabling and earthworks, and also on marine and tunnels. We'd like to do something similar with our main civils scope 2, and maybe get some of our tier 1 contractors involved on that. As Mick alluded to in the presentation, we're keen to utilise the relationships with our tier 1 contractors and suppliers and provide more information on certain scopes of work like the Geotech Alliance, for example, and we'll be continuing these events through the delivery of the project. We'd like to hear your feedback on these sessions. We want to hear your thoughts, how it went, also any issues that you're currently facing around working on Sizewell, also what you would like to hear from us, whether it's certain topics or subject areas, for example, commercial and contracts. Next slide, please. So here's a glimpse of our forward look of packages across all 3 scopes of work. So this is including enabling and earthworks, main civils, and marine and tunnels. So all competitive tenders will be advertised on Compete For. So if you have one takeaway from today's session, it's to be signed up on Compete For. I have included a QR code there, but you can also, I'm sure we can share the link after this presentation. It will have all the live packages that we'll be going to tender for on that website, so it's definitely the place to be in terms of keeping up to date with the project. I just want to take a moment to thank the Chamber for coordinating today and thank all the speakers that have taken part. Again, these slides will be shared after the session, so if you'd like to have a deep dive on this slide after that, then that will be the place to go. So I'd like to hand back to the Chamber and thank you all for joining.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you to everyone. I know, and it's really pleasing, to be fair, because so many comments kind of saying brilliant, loads of detail, and many of you will know from the various events we do, our desire is always, if there's information out there, I always say, we're not hiding it. We will always make sure you've got it as soon as is possible. And with all the fanfare over the last few weeks around FID on Sizewell and the government 14 billion investment and things like that, I appreciate the news on the PAA being signed for the Alliance maybe got a little bit lost almost. But it was such an important milestone as well for the project because it's enabled things like today. So thank you so much to the entire Alliance team. Great detail. And I think, we'll do the Q&A in a second, but just a couple of points which I'll raise. Firstly, what Olivia said there, when it comes to events, we are working incredibly closely with Olivia and other members of the Alliance team to plan those events in. As soon as we do, you will be invited if you are relevant to the content. If they are general engagement, you'll also see them on our website. So all of that info about how we enable now that engagement between yourselves on this call and the Alliance, or possibly more importantly, yourselves in this call and the Alliance Tier 1 contractors, some of the names you saw on some of Derek's early slides, that's going to be our very much post-summer, our aim and our ambition to enable that as much as we can. Also, I want to say, I know there's a few comments when Jess was speaking around, you know, brilliant, putting hands up to support charities and voluntary work, amazing. Best way I can say it from a chamber perspective, don't wait for the Alliance. You can go do it tomorrow. All of you, if you're registered on our local supply chain database, you can search for charities. You can search for them as businesses, because a number of charities, voluntary organisations, social enterprises are signed up to our platform. Or if there's a particular area where you as a business want to do some good, just ask us at the chamber. We can connect you in with the right charities, and that way you're doing some good in advance of any potential opportunities at Sizewell or other projects. So anyone that ever needs any help connecting into wider infrastructure in the East to do some good, whether that's skills or charity work, please just reach out to us and we will help you. So no, I think fantastic, and thank you everyone. We will ask some questions, and I will see if the team from CWA can step up. Now, there has been a large number, so there is every chance I'm not going to be able, or we should say, I'm not going to be able to answer every single one, but I'm going to go to the start. First question that came in, and I know there's a couple linked to this, so I will ask this. So we've signed up for Compete For. As architects, we want opportunities around design. Are there opportunities coming up that we can tender for? Is there alerts we can set up for any architecture opportunities? Okay, so the second half, I'll quickly handle that. When you sign up to Compete For, obviously, when you set your profile up, you can automatically set your alerts. So now bear in mind, when you're signing up for Compete For, you're not just signing up for Sizewell, you're signing up for everything that's on Compete For. So if you say you want design opportunities on Compete For should then automatically alert you whether it is Sizewell, whether it is HS2, whether it is Heathrow, or all the other opportunities that are on there. What I also say to every business, good practice is make it maybe a Tuesday and a Friday job for someone to just proactively go and check out the Sizewell page and search for opportunities, search for the word Sizewell, just to make sure nothing's being missed. Everyone's humans. Sometimes people do miss things, miss emails, spam folders get in the way. So actually just going on and having a look is vitally important. With regards to actually opportunities, Olivia, I don't know whether yourself or Ryan just wants to touch on where the opportunities are from an alliance perspective around design.
I don't know who wants to take this one. Mick,
yeah, I'll take that one. I've got problems with my camera button and my mic button. Sorry, everyone. So from a CWA perspective, and again, without going back to David's initial introduction, because he did cover quite a lot, there is limited design activity within the Civils Works Alliance. The core design for the power station, with a number of other consultants, is actually through Atkins Realis. We do have two I'm going to say relatively minor elements of permanent works design, which are actually replications from HPC. So effectively, they will be single source, and they are actually integral with the turbine halls. So again, from a safety case perspective, that sits beneath the power station, and the ability to operate the power station effectively, you know, that's already work that is in progress with two specific designers. That said, we do have temporary works. We have a lot of temporary works, as you can imagine. Some of that will be facilitated through an internal alliance temporary works team, but we are looking to establish a framework. And again, that Compete For notice, I do need to check, because that Compete For notice was due to be drafted 3 or 4 weeks ago. Whether it's actually been put onto Compete For, I don't know, but have a look. And what I can do, actually, I'll drop a note out as part of the responses to the Q&A just to find out where we are with that. But there is a very, very significant requirement for temporary works. Things around visitor centres, possibly not. I think that would again be more around the site delivery team, possibly Atkins, but again, less so, I think, associated with the CWA.
Thank you, Mick. And to answer the point on the temporary work, that has already been on Compete For. And we held a webinar with a large number of organisations that expressed interest in the local and regional supply chain, I will say 6 to 8 weeks ago, I think. And that is very soon going to go to the next stage of procurement. So that is underway. And then I think looking outside of the CWA scope, again, we're working with the client. So we're working with Sizewell C directly to identify any additional opportunities for design. Now, the likelihood, very similar to what Mick has said, is that a lot of the design work has been done. Atkins Realis in particular, the likes of WSP, etc., have been on the project for a long time. But there will be packages of work coming through that are first of a kind that the client is leading on procurement, that will be design build or design build and operate packages. So it may well be that there is then opportunities for those for collaboration between those who will do the build and operate bit and those that will do the design bit. But again, we will ensure that those opportunities are put forward to the right businesses as and when they come. So yes, hopefully that answers enough of that one. Number of other questions. A lot of people have asked about the slides. You'll get all the slides sent to you afterwards, so you'll be able to digest the information properly and fully in time. And also a copy of today's presentation will also be sent out. I've gone because it's gone back to the top. So is everything being procured via Compete For? As I haven't seen some of the item mentions today in the CWA presentation advertised there. So to be clear, Neil, all competitively tendered opportunities will be put on Compete For. So a number of what you've seen, I'll reference a lot of the MBIF activities that Derek went on. All of that has been on Compete For over the course of the last year, maybe a little longer. I'm looking at Ryan there as well. I think it's certainly been, it was around May last year that we held a large Meet the Buyer for the MBIF package of works with the Civil Works Alliance that proved very useful for all parties, I think, and also the supply chain, very successful one. And hence there is still packages of work coming out now around the MBIF. So if you look at the forward look that was published, I think last week by our team onto Compete For, a number of the packages that Derek has spoken about today are actually on that forward look of what's going to be procured in the next 3 months. So we would anticipate through the rest of the summer and into the autumn, there will be a number of packages going on to Compete For where they are competitively tendered. So hopefully that answers that one. I'm just going to have a little look down because there were some good ones, I think, back down the bottom again. So that one's design. So I will archive that one. Let me just find, there was one. So can you confirm how the CWA plan to work with offices in Bristol, Ipswich, London on site? Where does the CWA foresee decisions being taken? So I don't know, Mick, maybe, is that you?
I'm just looking for the question, actually. Where is it?
It's from Ricardo Penner. It's it was 47. It's about halfway down, I think. But so I'll read it exactly. So can you confirm how the CWA plan to work with the offices in Bristol, Ipswich, London and on site? Where does the CWA foresee decisions being taken?
That's a really interesting one. So again, going back to David's original introduction, there is an ongoing transition now to effectively move from the London base into a closer base, either actually on site, and obviously the people that need to be on site, the senior management team, a lot of the guys actually undertaking the work as opposed to the enabling functions will actually be based on the program itself. Okay. To the side of that, we've got, again, Derek mentioned it a number of times, Orwell Logistics Park, which is an office that the CWA has taken up a significant number of desks. And from an enabling function perspective, I'd include procurement within that, HR, finance, commercial teams. We'll all be sitting within the locality of the programme at Orwell, obviously not on the programme. And part of that is actually down to the limitations of the DCO and the number of individuals that can actually be on the actual programme on a daily basis. And then there will be, a team that will not be in isolation at Avonmouth, delivering elements of the M&T that will then obviously feed into, the management team that sits actually on the programme. So we are in a little bit of a state of transition. The decisions will be made ultimately through the DLT. The DLT reports into the Programme Alliance Board, and that is a combination of the implementation participants. Again, we didn't go into the detail around that. The implementation participants within the CWA, the people effectively that are going to undertake the work, we, Glasgow Roar, Balfour Beatty, and the owner participant. The owner participant in this case being Sizewell C. The Programme Alliance Board is made up of key individuals from each of those participants, and ultimately that's where the decisions will be made.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mick.
Does that answer the question?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, I'm uneducated, Mick, but it sounded good to me, so I'm going with you. So
thanks.
There was one, because I know it's and Olivia kind of touched on it in one of the potential events that I know we're looking at. Oh, there you go, Ricardo said great reply as well. So maybe, I don't know if Ryan or Olivia want to answer this one. There seems to be a large volume of geotechnical work. How do we connect with the CWA to offer our support to help with capacity and capability? There's a limited pool of geotech expertise.
I'll start and then Ryan can jump in. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're working with the Geotech Alliance, which is a sub-alliance of, it's all very complicated in alliance terms, but it's technically a subsection of the alliance. So we'll be working with them acting as our tier 1 contractors in that department. So we'll be working with them directly to see how we can start to build a relationship between the Geotech Alliance and the Chamber, and then obviously the connections through that to the local and regional supply chain. So we'll be looking at hopefully doing events around that to understand a little bit more around the structure of the Geotech Alliance. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to add on to that, or Mick.
Yeah, I'll pick that one up. Sorry, Olivia. So again, I don't think there's any particular trade secrets around this, such as the volume, the scale, and the complexity of the ground improvement works. And I sort of did it a massive disservice earlier by saying it was just building a wall. Obviously, Derek went into to much more detail around effectively creating the hard rock that Hinkley's built on, and that's what we're looking to do here. But we've got well over, I would suggest, probably £500 million worth of geotech work. The biggest chunk of that is actually the wall that we've described, the 50 metre deep, 3 kilometre long wall that effectively keeps the water in the peat out of the hole that we'll dig to build the power station. It's temporary works, but it's a hugely significant piece of work. Really enabling the whole build of the power station. Within that, there are elements of piling, and there's also quite a lot of ground improvement works, which are not typical actually to the UK. Deep soil mixing, shallow soil mixing, trench soil mixing. It's all been a massive education for me in that, but there is a significant amount of ground improvement works. So the view that we took as the CWA is, rather than try and have lumpy bits of procurement and lumpy bits of work that we would let over time, effectively what we wanted to do was to bring the best that the market could offer into a sub-alliance to deliver all of that work. Okay, so we've gone through a procurement process and we spread the net globally, actually, in terms of the work that we did. And through that procurement process, we have chosen VSL, Balfour Beatty Ground Engineering, and Bashi to form an alliance to deliver that work. Okay, now that work is ongoing at the moment, and we are looking to get the Geotech Subcontract Alliance effectively mobilised to deliver work from the 1st of January 2026. Okay, to that point, and this is where it does sort of dovetail with Derek's slides, at the moment, we've got VSL expanded piling and Balfour Beatty ground engineering delivering early elements of that scope while we build the geotech subcontract alliance. Okay, so as we go deeper into the year, I would, a bit like the CWA, I would expect the GSA to become more real, to probably have its own logos, and absolutely to have sessions like this. I would suggest in the meantime to make those connections. If you do have those connections into those three companies, to use those, or to drop a note to Olivia, to Ryan, and we will make those connections. I think it's really, really important. And again, this does come back to some of the discussions we've already had around Compete For. I do see Compete For as being super critical because I think there's a massive multiplier effect around this as well. Where we have to be is once we have our contracts placed, and it is a contractual obligation on our suppliers, is for those tier ones that we employ and deploy onto the program to start advertising their opportunities as well. Okay, so I think there's a piece of work that we are very, very aware of, and we are starting to look at how we can actually, as I say, increase that visibility that goes deeper into the supply chain. But I mean, just bringing it straight back to the GSA, if you've got connections with those three companies, I would say use them. If you don't, use us, and we will make those connections.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mick. And again, as mentioned earlier, the work that we will be doing increasingly with Olivia and the wider teams will be about, again, enabling those conversations. Sometimes, you know, if anyone who's already working on Sizewell or has worked on large scale projects like this know these things don't happen overnight. They take a long time, even when agreements are in place. I mean, look at the Civil Works Alliance. I mean, how long ago did we meet, Mick? And you signed your contract last month. So these things take a long time, and sometimes it's about the right time to engage. But we will ensure as much as we can we enable that piece of work. I know there's a few questions around standards, so I'll kind of try and summarize them, and hopefully they were with what Olivia said and Daniela said as well. But we've got the webinars coming up in September and October. They're now on our website. You can register for those. We're going to work across the essential standards for what Sizewell C want, which will then reflect with what Construction Line want for the Alliance as well, really helping you to ensure that you are ready for these opportunities. And generally speaking, what is classed as essential standards aligns to what the PQQ is. So therefore, getting yourself in the right position is going to open those doors to be able to start bidding for work on this project. So hopefully that kind of summarizes a lot of what the questions around standards have been, just to try and sort of bottom that one out. And I think there's also been a lot of questions around labour supply. Many of you, if you already signed up to our platform, we know we put out an email and a social post recently on this. So Sizewell themselves will be procuring a framework later on this year. We have no more details at this stage, but any business that is signed up to both Compete For and our website will be informed of what's going to happen and what next stages as soon as they are available. But there will be a procurement framework for labour supply that will be later this year. So all we can say to businesses, keep signed up and we will alert you as soon as that opportunity does become available. Because I know there's been a few questions on that one. So right, let's see where there was another, I think right at the start, if I remember right, there's one from Infobond. So if I go down to that, because Ash got one in nice and easy. So Infobond has signed up for Compete For. Any guidance on how open opportunities are advertised, please? I think, you know, to summarize this, Ashley, and for everyone, I think it kind of linked to earlier, anything will be published, generally speaking, with expression of interest for a minimum of 10 days. The expression of interest stage on Compete For is just that. In essence, you are putting your hand up as a business. Most of the time, there will be limited questions that you need to answer, a handful at most. And the idea then is that is almost market intelligence. That is market engagement from, in this example, the CWA or their tier one contractors or Sizewell C, or in the future, the Mechanical and Electrical Alliance as well. To utilize that platform to see, okay, where's the interest? The aim there is then look over who has expressed interest to then take it into the procurement process, which, as the team here today outlined, will go onto Construction Line for the PQQ. So that is the way in which this process will work. So compete for, as I mentioned earlier, if you set your account up correctly, you should be alerted. Bear in mind, as local and regional businesses, we're your safety net. So if a package of work goes out that we think is relevant to you based on the information you've given us, we also email you to tell you that there's something going on, and we also put the social media post out. And then should you respond and you're taken forward, or not taken forward, obviously, you'll be alerted, and then the process really begins in earnest. I think the question on how will the hard rock be delivered to site has been answered, but is there anything else, Mick, Ryan, or Derek, that you want to add to that question there? Like I say, literally, how will the hard rock be delivered to site?
Yeah, 10-second answer, mate. So the hard rock in terms of the foundation, which I spoke around, will come through the MBIF, which is via conveyor, which Derek went through, and the rock armour will be through the beach landing facility.
Fantastic, thank you. And then another question kind of related to materials. Sorry, I just scanned off of it and then I should have scanned back. So do you have a site UCAS materials facility in place? This company's obviously provided materials down at HPC. So how can they or others obviously support Sizewell C and share experience in lessons in this area? If you're looking for the question, it's towards the bottom from Matt Ewing. We're all frantically reading it, Matt. That's a very good question.
So I suppose, so who does Matt work for out of interest?
I'm going to say BAM, but I'm really hoping I've got my names right now. And if I haven't, Matt, I'm really, really sorry. Right, I'm pretty sure Matt is BAM.
So in terms of the hardware, the lab itself, we are mid procurement on that one, Matt. In terms of how we kit it out, the answer to that is I don't think we are. I'll say we haven't. So we don't have a UK UCAS materials facility yet. Where we are with it in terms of building it, other than the accommodation itself, I'll put my hand up and say I don't know, but we can find an answer to that one quite quickly. So we'll respond to that through the process that Ash was talking about earlier in terms of covering off all the questions. We'll get a response on that one.
Brilliant, Mick. Thank you.
I think just to add to that, just as a sharing experience and lessons learned, through the feedback form we'll fill in, I think that would be a great insight for us to take on board when kind of following on and engaging with local and regional supply chains. So once that link's sent out, if you can share a bit about your experience, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Thank you, Olivia. Nice, easy one for me to bottom off. Top question. Do organisations need to be approved by the consortium? No. You don't have to be a consortium. You don't have to be a chamber member. All we say to absolutely every business that wants to be involved in this project is just sign up. It's free to sign up. You don't need to pay anything for it. The aim is enabling as much of this opportunity as possible. So then you can then make ultimately the decisions as a business. Do we need to do anything, improve anything, make any investments, etc. But you don't need to be a member of the chamber. Lovely if you are. You don't need to be a member of the consortium or any business organisation. At the end of the day, from our perspective, as long as you are a member of, as long as you are based in the 6 counties of the East, you register with us. If you're a UK-based business, you just register on Compete For. Nice and simple with that one. There was also a good question that I saw, and I'm now going to try and find it. So will you be able to release the details of the procurement teams for the tier 1s involved, such as emails, accreditations? So, Robbie, I'll answer first. And I think the key, as always, I mean, I'm sure if we gave senior supply chain lead at VSL's email out now, you'd all email him or her, and he'd be absolutely inundated. As always, the aim is to do it proportionately and in the right way. So part of our role, and Olivia won't mind me saying, we've been exchanging messages during this webinar saying, need some intros, please, because we want to ensure that we're working with those tier 1s. Where's the opportunity? When is the opportunity? And what's needed? So that then we can make those introductions, arrange those events, those webinars, etc. But part of this is going to be how we, again, enable the CWA to bring its tier 1s adhere to its commitments that the CWA has made, that ultimately are Sizewell C's commitments around local spend, around the community engagement and all the stuff Jess spoke about, to ensure that then if they need to deliver a service, that they're doing it with as much local and regional businesses as possible. So we'll support doing that. Olivia or Mick or Ryan, from your side, is there anything addition you want to add?
I think that's a great summary. We do want to do that in a coordinated fashion. So, you know, the geotech's a great example of that. And as Olivia says, we've got that, you know, we've got that on the forward look. You know, I would add to this while I'm speaking, you know, great session. Thanks to Ashley for coordinating this and Olivia for pulling it together. I thought all the presenters were great today. We do want this to be the start of the conversation with the CWA. So please do let us know via the chamber, you know, what you want to know more about, and we can schedule that in.
Fantastic, thank you. Decent question here from Laura, quite a detailed one. So you'll probably swear at me afterwards for asking it, but we're a special. I'll read it as it is. It's about halfway down. We're a specialist agency for piling, tunnelling, earthworks. Currently engaged by tier 1 contractors on site, but we're experiencing challenges in gaining official approval as part of the supply chain. Can you advise at what stage CWA will officially be engaging with specialist agencies to support these early works? We are keen to align with the correct process, but as a company, we're finding it difficult. So how is the CWA, I suppose, going to enable companies that are maybe potentially at the moment struggling to engage with the tier 1s? What's the best way you're going to be able to support them?
I think, again, referencing this form, it's definitely something that I pointed to in my last slide, but we do want to hear the challenges with working on the project, so we can start to kind of build those relationships with our tier 1s and kind of make sure that it's easy for tier 2s to work with them. But yeah, you know, as Ryan said, like, this is very much the start of us working as the Civil Works Alliance. We definitely want to know lessons learned from Hinckley if you have had experience on Hinckley, but also any issues that you are having, and we can try and help to overcome them as we start to deliver the project.
Brilliant, thank you. I know a bit of a side question, but I suppose there could be links to what Jess said as well with this. But how are you intending to share achievements and what we're allowed to and not allowed to share? I think to be clear on this one, Simon, should you get the chance to win on the project, trust me, we want to celebrate it. I do. You know, as a chamber, any local and regional business that wins a contract, we are normally chasing them down for when we can do comms. The direction of this will come from above, wherever that above should come. So if you're working for a contractor who happens to be working for the Alliance, who are working for the client, you will be informed as to how you can share, what you can share and when you can share. There are strict rules around this, particularly on the timeliness of some of this stuff, and also dependent on the scope of works. But sharing achievements is vitally, vitally important, both from, you know, flag waving the project for what it's trying to be with best in class, but also from a local perspective to really send that encouragement that, you know what, all these words that have been said for a long time, they're actually true. So from a purely personal perspective and a shellfish perspective, within the chamber network, you know, if you are a local and regional business that wins work on the project, please tell us. You know, we like to keep our finger on the pulse. We like to think we know about lots of the contract award wins, but we don't know about everything throughout the entire supply chain. So if you do win work on the project, let us know, and we can support that amplification of your celebration and your contract, and also, you know, how we really make the most of any bit of PR that's there. And I'm going to presume, I'll probably look for a nod more than anything else, it'll be the same with the CWA.
Yeah, there's specific obligations in the contract, but it's a really good point. We should probably pull some general guidance together that we can easily share, just to make sure we're all, you know, working in line.
Yeah, that might just be a simple lunch and learn at some point with the comms team, Ryan.
Yeah.
Could I just and sorry, my laptop.
Let me guess, Mick's laptop is about to die. I mean, that's amazing.
That's
timing.
Comic timing, yeah.
I'd say it better have been profound, whatever he was going to say. So I'm sure it was. In a minute, we might see him come past Olivia's head to ask whatever he was going to. But so there's a question regarding. So
coming.
Oh, there you go, Derek. For you, we'll quickly get in before Mick comes in. So regarding the temporary sea defence rock armour. Supply and install was mentioned. Maybe precast units would be considered. as a way to reduce the carbon footprint? Would there be an area within Sizewell C to manufacture on site to negate the need for marine and road transport? Also, are there any nature enhancement targets for the project? Right, I'll answer the second part of that. But Derek, is there plans from a CWA scope around on-site ability for precast or construction like this?
To answer that one, that's one of the questions we're actually looking at the moment, as well as where's the optimum place to locate it. Currently, the feeling would be no. Apologies for the noise if you hear it in there. Currently, the answer is no, because if you just have to imagine that the site is actually quite constrained in size. So actually finding sufficient space to manufacture these on site is fairly, it's fairly limited within there. So then we're looking at external locations to fabricate them, and then how we actually then get them delivered to site. But all options are open at this moment.
And I think, again, if I reflect on what the clients or what Sizewell are looking to do in this area, I think to be brutally honest, David, they are restricted by space. Technically, Sizewell has more square footage than they have at Hinckley. They just have less usable space than they do at Hinckley. So they're trying to build exactly the same thing, in essence, in a smaller area with a lot more B roads and C roads. So it's not ideal, hence the focus on rail and sea. Putting additional on-site construction is very hard. So same with the client, they're looking at, okay, if it has to be off-site, where is the best place? So it could well be that actually the best place is somewhere with a railhead, with the ability to get close to sea, or at least if it is going to be somewhere that needs road, how they can do it that doesn't hamper the very strict numbers on vehicle movements. And also just consider, if you haven't looked at it, the construction transport management plan for Sizewell, it outlines, compared to a normal infrastructure project, Sizewell's confined numbers, I don't know how you want to describe it, but what is classed as an HGV on Sizewell is even more stringent than it is on any other project. They've got smaller loads that are still classed within this. So there is a lot of pressure on Sizewell too, where they can off-site fabricate and to do it in the right places. So hence locations like Ipswich, like Lowestoft, like what's been shown with Avonmouth, which give the ability to rail and see stuff rather than put onto road, are so important. So again, if you've got suggestions around this area, I know we've spoke to a number of precast companies over the course of the last year, then obviously keep them coming in. Like with everything, keep this stuff coming in. When it comes to nature enhancement targets for the project, okay, it's a separate conversation entirely, but my word, yes. For example, they've just awarded, I don't think it's gone public yet, but they've just awarded the Halesworth and Pakenham schemes. So Sizewell has already built one nature habitat zone, Wild Aldhurst, that potentially could become a triple SI, which will be the first of a kind. They built Marsh Harrier habitat, which is now establishing really well just to the north of the site, between the site and Minsmere. They've also finished construction on Benall, just near Friday Street, near where the roundabout's about to be constructed by Brahini. And then, like I say, there's two more habitat mitigation zones about to be constructed, one in Halesworth and one in Pakenham. And now Pakenham, for those who don't know, is Bury St Edmunds. I mean, it's an hour plus from the site, but it is all about looking at where the impact is happening on site and the nature, and particularly the ecology and the animals that are most affected, particularly bird life. And this will increase, so they will want to see more. Also, the project has signed a strategic agreement with an organisation called Wild East. So again, for any businesses looking to do good, please do engage with Wild East, because any business can get involved. Wild East is not about necessarily always building new habitats or improving existing habitats. It is about creating paths for nature, and sometimes that is through towns and cities. We always use the same example of roofs and car parks. You know, post-COVID, a lot of business car parks are a little emptier than they used to be. So how can maybe part of your car parks be given back to nature? How can you transmit that land back to what it could have been to create an area for nature? And that's all things that will be deliverable and demonstrable to benefit you winning work at Sizewell. And if you're, in the example of the CWA or its tier one contractors, local contractors tick a box, but local contractors that are doing good with colleges, with prisons and nature tick an even bigger box. So it's so important to look at those areas. And again, we can connect you in with the right charities, right organisations if you need them. We'll do a couple more questions. Like I say, there's some that are a little more detailed. So we may well allow answers on those to be post the event, because they might take a little bit of external SMEs coming into this. But one that was asked quite early on about the BLF, Derek. So is the BLF long enough to allow always available, always afloat for 24/7 access for self-propelled vessels rather than only towed barges?
Well, that's a great question. There is a study ongoing at this moment, which is part of the reason why we're actually trying to extend the BLF. So originally it was 100 meters long. It's basically becoming 200 meters long, to allow both the access to the jetty and also winter working as well. So actually to extend the season as well. So it's a double benefit we actually get there. The type of vessel is still being sorted. I have to say, is regarding what the final vessel will actually be and what we're actually designing for. Previously, it was a North Sea barge that I think everybody's familiar with. Or certainly those on the marine side that's familiar with, but we're looking at what vessels can actually fit in there at the moment. So that's why the design is actually not going to be completed until Q1 next year, because we're actually trying to finalise out what the requirements are going to be. But yes, we're trying to maximise the full season.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think, again, there's a question here, kind of almost a bit of a general answer that hopefully will answer this and one or two of the other questions, from Paul at Universal Site Supplies, basically saying, I'm looking to see how we put ourselves forward to contractors that are already on site. So again, watch this space. I think to the other side of the summer, you will see a lot more in-person events, not just Civil Works Alliance, but also client direct, and also the other parts of the project. And again, for those of you not aware of the way these large scale projects work, CWA are talking about a big scope of works today. Look at it, that there are 7 versions in total of the CWA working on this project, all with different levels of engagement. You know, the nuclear island team dealing with the real central stuff, that's hugely replicated. That is the French expertise, for example, the likes of Framatome and so on. But then you've also got the Civil Alliance, the MEH Alliance, and site delivery. So there's 7 different procurement streams within this project that have all got tier 1 contractors, all of them signing up to this. So what we're looking to do, like I say, post-summer, you'll get a lot more detail on this and stuff will start to appear on our website, is create more environments where, as local suppliers of kit that is needed, services and supplies that are needed, that you'll be able to engage with those right contractors. I'm not here to make excuses for the project, but there's been a lot going on. But the announcement a few weeks ago, I cannot stress how much that frees things up. And it now enables much more forward planning. I know there were some questions as well around, you know, how they engage with the designers, because so much is being designed on site. It is because there has just been a necessity since triggering the DCO in January 2024. The project has had to just get stuff done. There is certain things that needed to be done within a certain time that has not allowed so much new businesses to get engaged in the way we would have wanted to, and the project would have wanted to. That kind of changes now. Now the enablement is there for us to start to engage, and hence sessions like this. And as has been mentioned numerous times, this is only the start. I think Ryan said it a moment ago. This is only the start of this engagement. And certainly, again, as always, engage with us, work with us, and we'll support in helping you understand who and why you should be there. The best thing you can do as a business at the minute is just make sure your portal truly represents you as a business, so that when we get asked a question from Derek saying, Ash, who have you got you can do dolphins, we can go onto our platform and find those businesses that can do dolphins and make sure that they are put forward for the opportunity. We'll do one more question before we cut it off. And like I say, every other question, rest assured, if you've answered one, we've not had a chance to answer it, or we think it's probably going to be a little too detailed to cover off now, then we will make sure these are all shared and all answered. It may well be we send out the slides and video recording, some links quickly, and then the Q&A comes a little later, but you will, like we do with the all supplier webinars that we now do bi-monthly with Malcolm Dare, but you will get all of this information coming through. So let me just have, I suppose, final little one maybe for you, Derek. So when is the expected timeline for initiating and finalising the marine procurement strategy?
So the marine procurement strategy will start getting into the sourcing element of the works in Q4 this year. With a view to appointing ECIs during 2026. You'll see things coming in to compete for probably, I would say, October this year.
Fantastic. Thank you, Derek. To the point, nailed it. So look, I think, like I said, I'm as always, I'm happy to keep going, but I appreciate everyone's got lives and very busy. If you're looking at the CWA lot, they're incredibly busy. So we will end the Q&A there. Went on a lot longer than we expected, but fantastic that we had so many questions and brilliant numbers. So look, I'll just say huge thank you firstly to the entire CWA team, and obviously Dave Spate, who obviously had to leave us a little early for his opening thing from the Civil Works programme. Very much, for those not aware, they're the handholder between Sizewell C and the CWA to really ensure that the CWA is not only delivering on what it needs to do, but on what Sizewell assured that it would do through this project. As always, if you take nothing else away, the most important message, make sure you are signed up to the portals and that your platforms and your portal entries are as accurate as possible. And if you have any questions whatsoever, any concerns, any worries, any problems, any things that you need support on, that's what myself and the entire team here at the Chamber are there to do, to help connect you in and to help guide you through this as much as we can. And like I say, I think other side of the summer, keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on the social media and your emails, and there will be a lot more news on events and engagements as we move into 2026 and get ready to dig a very big hole in 2027. So I'll say thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all attending. Hope you have a smashing day, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you.